Hey friends, this is Rick Green with today's Constitutional Minute. Hopefully this is going to be a quick one. I just want to hit one issue because it could be huge in about 2 weeks from now. Now this is an obscure clause in the Constitution that most people have never thought about or heard about, and it could become the pivotal few words for determining who the next president of the United States is going to be. So just to lead up to that, just a little reminder here, we've got litigation, we've got fraud claims, we've got clearly breaking of the law by governors and secretaries of state and local officials, and several states are very much still up for grabs. Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia. There are lawsuits in each of these states. There are legislative hearings taking place to determine what actually happened. All I want to talk about in this particular Constitutional Minute is what it could come down to should a few of these states be thrown out. And that's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. It could very seriously happen. And the reason is because in several of these states, because of the claims of fraud, but more importantly than the claims of fraud, because of the blatant breaking of the law and violation of the Constitution, the Supreme Court is going to be faced with a very serious decision here. They're going to have to say, okay, look, these states broke the law by changing the election rules at the last minute when they had no authority to do so. Article 2, Section 1 absolutely, positively leaves the choosing of electors and the process for that up to the legislature, not the Secretary of State or the governor. And Article 1 leaves that time, place, and manner of elections entirely up to the legislature. So no question, everybody knows the legislature sets election law. But because these governors have gotten away with making up the law on their own all year long due to COVID, they thought they could do that with the elections as well. And they changed the rules of the game to help their team. So what the Supreme Court's going to have to do is say, okay, wait a minute. These governors and secretaries of state broke the law, created these election schemes to help their side, and now we have to decide, were the ballots cast under those schemes illegal? Well, by any definition of the law, they absolutely were illegal. Second question is going to be, can we separate them from the legal ballots? If they've all been thrown in and mixed in, then you've poisoned the well, and that entire state's outcome could have to be thrown out because of that. Or even if they can separate them from the legal ballots, the Supreme Court's going to have to ask a very important question. What about all those hundreds of thousands of people that voted thinking they were voting legally, but it turns out they were voting illegally? Have we disenfranchised them by throwing out their votes? Not their fault that the governor said this would be legal, and it turns out it is illegal. So the Supreme Court's going to be faced with a very tough decision. Do we count illegal votes, or do we not count illegal votes and therefore disenfranchise folks? They may have to toss the results. Certainly in Wisconsin, where you've got Thomas More Society's got a lawsuit going there now saying that over 100,000 votes were cast this way illegally. It's only a 20,000 vote difference. That definitely could change the outcome of the election. More importantly, the integrity of the election has to be upheld. You've got similar type suits in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, and Michigan's looking at it there as well. So here's what I want to point out. If these votes or these electoral votes are tossed, then you could very well get to a point where no one gets 270. Everybody talks about 270. We got to get 270 electoral votes because that's a majority of 538. Now, the number 538, just so you're aware of where that comes from, that is 100 senators, 435 congressmen, and then 3 electoral votes from the District of Columbia. That's how we end up at 538. So your state's electoral college votes, it's a total of your 2 senators plus however many congressmen you have. So if you only have 1 congressman, if you're one of those small states that has 3 electoral votes, that's where it comes from. 2 senators, 1 congressman. If you're a larger state that has let's say Pennsylvania has 20 electoral votes. Well, that means they've got 18 congressmen and 2 senators. And then the District of Columbia gets 3 votes. Okay, that's how you get to 538. That's why everybody says you got to have 270 in order to have 50%. Because if you had 269 to 269, it's a tie. And therefore, it goes to a contingent election in the House. Well, if nobody gets to 270, same thing's going to happen. And so here's what I'm bringing all of this to. What is the whole number of electors? Let me just read it to you out of the 12th Amendment. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be president if such number be, quote, a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. Is that 538? Or if 3 states get thrown out, is it that lower number minus those electoral votes? Now, this has somewhat happened in history. This is a little bit new, but it's somewhat happened in history, but never to the extent that that definition of whole number could change the outcome. Okay, so for instance, in 1872, you had an election where Arkansas and Louisiana's electors were not counted. They weren't counted for any particular candidate, but they were still included in the denominator. So it was still a total number of possible electors. Someone had to have the majority of the total number of possible electors, and Grant did. Now, even if they had changed the denominator and deducted Arkansas and Louisiana's electors from both the numerator and the denominator, he still would have won. He still would have had a majority even without them. That's not the case here in 2020. If you do not include, let's say, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, those are the most likely ones to get tossed. If those are not included in the numerator, then nobody gets 270 of a denominator of 538. If you take them out of the denominator, so you don't include them at all in what the, quote, whole number of electors would be, then Joe Biden still gets a majority of the Electoral College. So that definition, what is the whole number of electors, that's going to determine whether Joe Biden wins or Donald Trump wins if the Supreme Court tosses 3 of these 5 states. So that's going to be an epic battle. I don't know what the outcome of that's going to be because there's historical precedent for keeping it in the denominator, which is what happened in 1872. And then there are examples in 1864 and a couple others where you just had 1 electoral vote or maybe 2 that weren't included, and they actually took them out of the denominator as well. So, folks, get ready for some fireworks. This could be new constitutional law. It's going to be determined by the Congress possibly and by the Supreme Court possibly, but it's all going to come down to what does it mean when we say the whole number of electors appointed. I'm Rick Green. This has been today's Constitutional Minute.